Hi, I'm Quentin Schultz, author of the book Communicating with Grace and Virtue. I'd like to share 4 thoughts with you from chapter 4 of the book, where I look at what's fundamentally wrong with our communication, that we're broken. Our communication as human beings is broken. So here we go. 4 truths for clarity about the brokenness of our communication. Let's start with number 1, just to admit that our communication is indeed broken. There's no perfection. There's no reason to try to seek perfect communication because it is not going to happen. Our communication with God, with other people, with ourselves is broken. And the more we try to seek perfection, the more frustrated we get and the more down on ourselves we get because we can't pull it off. So don't seek perfection. That's a sign of our brokenness that we would actually try to be perfect communicators. Second, we have to learn by experience over time. So we put some effort into our communication, we practice our communication, we make mistakes in our communication, but we grow. We grow over the course of a lifetime. We grow in each of our relationships. It just takes time. We have to be aware of what we're doing, learn from the mistakes, and move on. I'm better at communicating with kids today as a grandparent than I was when I was a parent because I learned through the mistakes I made in my parenting. And now I don't have to make those with my grandparenting, though I make some other mistakes. That's a different story. But it's growth. Good communication is growth over time. We put in the effort, we practice, and we learn from our mistakes. Third, we have to watch out for tribalism. Now, by tribalism, what I mean is we get together in our close-knit groups, those of us who think alike, feel alike, we see the world in similar ways. We create our little tribes, our groups, if you will. And we communicate within the tribe quite well because we know each other, we know how to communicate. But as soon as we get outside that tribe, we start to get into trouble because we don't understand how to communicate with these other people who are different from us. And there's even a worse aspect of this tribalism. Let's call it confirmation bias. Confirmation bias. We seek out messages, we seek out communication with people who will confirm for us what we believe or want to believe. So they will think like us. We seek this out and we don't like to be challenged. So our communication stays within the group, within the tribe, and it's confirmed. And we even seek out media that will confirm our existing biases. So a lot of the media today are basically in the business of confirming what a particular group or tribe wants to believe or think about the world. This is part of our brokenness. So in these 3 ways, plus other ways I talk about in the book, our communication is indeed broken. The second point is we have to stop hiding because our tendency is, in the brokenness of our communication, to hide. We don't open up. We avoid transparency. We don't want to open up. We don't want others to really get to know us. Why? Well, because we're worried. Shame. We all have shame. We don't want other people to know things about ourselves that might shame us. We have guilt. We all have feelings of inadequacy, that we can't really do things well, especially in our communication. When you look at something like public speaking that so many people are fearful of, one of the biggest reasons people are fearful of public speaking is that we might make a fool of ourselves and people will see our inadequacies. They'll see the way we really are as broken, fallen people. And we don't want that. And then maybe most of all, we fear rejection because we might communicate in a way that somebody else would reject us. So we don't open up all that well. And this leads to some real problems. But I get the fear. I really do get the fear. In fact, I have done some terrible things that have, I feel terrible about. I'm going to tell you one right now. I gave a 90-minute presentation with PowerPoint in a room with about 200 people who were in ministry and wanted to know how to use the World Wide Web, the internet, web pages well. And so I created this presentation. And I thought it'd be a little bit fun in doing it. And I created the 10 things not to do, because each of those gave me a context for talking about what to do. And I called it Dr. Q's. I'm Dr. Q, Quentin Schultz. My students for years have called me Dr. Q. So I called it Dr. Q's Top 10 Boners. That's right. You heard me right. Top 10 boners. So I gave this presentation. Number one, Dr. Q's 10th boner, 9th, top 10, down to 8, 7, and so on. Now, you're probably, if you know what a boner is, you're probably wondering what in the world I was doing there. Well, here's the thing. To me, with a PhD in communication, a boner was just a simple mistake, a dumb mistake. I'm not kidding. That's what the word means. It means other things, of course, but that's what it means. And so I created this, and people were laughing, and they're laughing more and more and more as I go through this presentation. Now, what is going on here? I could not figure it out. Finished the presentation up. There was a break before I came back for more, and my former student of mine was there, and she came up to me and she said, Dr. Q, do you know what a boner is? I said, yes, it's a simple or dumb little mistake, not a big mistake. She was red-faced. She said, well, Dr. Q, it means something more. And I said, what's that? And she told me. She told me. Oh, you talk about being shamed. You talk about a sense of guilt and the fear I had at that point to come back for the next session. So we all do things in communication that cause problems for us. We make fools of ourselves, if I can put it that way, and we are fearful of being known, so we don't become transparent. But here's the thing, point number 2, love requires transparency. If we want to get close with other people, if we want to love other people, want them to love us, we have to get to know them. We have to be open, transparent, because when we're transparent, we get to know people well enough that we can love them and love us as distinct people. If our relationships are superficial, we can't really love. This is just the way we are made. Number 3, we sin by omission. When we don't open up enough with others and they don't open up with us, this superficial communication that we have keeps us from saying, texting, doing the things we should do for other people. For instance, all of us need encouragement. So we should be encouraging others. They should be encouraging us. All of us want to be thanked for things. We really need to be thanked. But if we don't open up, it doesn't happen. So we have to get out of our shells and do that. I keep a file of notes, started with handwritten notes, and then emails that I've received over the years from students. And I keep those in a file, and periodically when I'm feeling down about my work or about myself, I pull that file out and I read through those notes of thanks. And I tell you, it blesses me. It tickles my heart. I'm so grateful for those notes of gratitude. We all need it. So we need to open up and offer encouragement and gratitude and other things. There are sins of omissions where we don't say those things that we should say. Number 4, we do need to open up appropriately. And sometimes our broken communication is because we are inappropriate. We open up, but inappropriately. How much should we tell other people about ourselves? Depends a lot on the context. So online, where a lot of people can read things, we have to be careful because other people are going to be reading things and looking at things, or maybe videos we've posted. Do we know everyone that's going to see them? Is it appropriate for everyone? What's the context? What about if it's a parent, or what about if it's a close friend? In other words, we have to judge the level of our transparency, how open we are, to make it appropriate. So I used the boner example a little bit ago to ask you this question. Was that appropriate for me to put it in this video to show people? And did I approach it appropriately? Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But since this is a kind of learning video, I feel comfortable pushing it a little bit and asking you what you think about that and using it as an example. So the second thing is we have to stop hiding. We have to become more transparent, open up. Number 3, we have to stop blaming. Not only do we hide and refuse to be transparent, but we blame. We blame people. We're critical of people. We put other people down. We have this tendency, first of all, to assume that other people are wrong and we are right, that other people are at fault and we are not at fault when our communication falls apart. We don't right away assume that we are at fault. So second, we sin by commission. For example, we criticize other people. We laugh at other people, not with other people. We gossip. And a lot of stuff on social media, you have to agree with me here in social media, is just not good. It's nasty stuff. It's critical stuff. It's putting people down. And we might think it's okay because we don't know the people we're putting down, but it's not okay. We tend to sin by commission. There are all kinds of ways that we use the gift of communication negatively, in ways that hurt other people and hurt our relationship with God and with other people and with ourselves. So we have to watch it. We sin by commission. Finally, in order to stop this blaming, these sins of commission, we need empathy. We have to learn to practice empathy. Empathy is putting ourselves in other people's shoes, seeing things from other people's perspectives. When we do that, it gives us a very good sense of whether or not our communication is good and right and proper, because we see it from the standpoint of the other people, not just from the standpoint of what we want to communicate. So in telling my story a little while ago about the boner incident, I had to put myself in your shoes and say, how would you think about that or whatever? And then once I do that, how should I tell the story if I do? What's the level of appropriateness? Empathy is a terrific gift from God, that we can do this. We can put ourselves in other people's shoes, the people that we communicate with, and try to imagine how they'll feel about something that we're going to say. So stop blaming. Number 4, we have to give up some control. Part of our brokenness as communicators is that we want to take control over the communication. We want to make things happen. We want a certain outcome. It's like when I was learning to be a parent with young adolescent children, and I would say to them, sit down, we're going to have a talk here now, or a conversation. I wanted control. I wanted to get across the message. I wanted to influence them. Well, that's not the way you influence adolescents, believe me. In fact, when your children move into adolescence, you have to take the position that basically you're a consultant, and you better be careful about giving too much advice and pushing advice, because in that way it's going to be rejected. And you have to kind of learn that the communication needs to come naturally. So you do things that promote communication, like you play games together, you go for rides together, you go to the beach together. You do things that when you're doing them, the communication opens up, and then there's great communication. And only rarely do you do this thing, which is really heavy-handed, to sit down to try to force the communication to get someone to do something or to agree with you. So we have to, first of all, avoid high expectations, because this is not easy. This is simply not easy. If we have too high expectations in our ability to control the communication with God, with other people, with ourselves, we're going to be disappointed. And disappointment of ourselves is not healthy, and it leads us, to get back to an earlier problem, to avoid transparency. Second, in giving up the control, we have to learn to enjoy the goofy process. Yeah, you heard me. Communication is goofy. It's a goofy process. It's kind of fun, but there's a lot of misunderstanding. We don't understand each other. But the misunderstanding can be fun too. Communication is like an adventure, lifelong, right? So we start this adventure, we make mistakes, we learn from it. It's never perfect. We can't control it all. it's not just a one-time destination we get to. I mean, I'm producing this video right now, and I know I'm making some mistakes. The communication is not as good as it could be. There are things going on that I wish I could control better and all of that. I'm doing my best with the best I have with the time available and all, but it's a goofy process. And it's okay if I make some mistakes, and I have made plenty of them. One time I did a radio interview with somebody who called me. I'm here in Michigan, near Grand Rapids, Michigan, and there's a little town called Zeeland. And I got a call from a radio station to do an interview the next day for the audience in New Zealand. Now, I figure this is a small little town or burg near Zeeland, Michigan, New Zealand. Oh, sure, I'll do the interview. Call me tomorrow at such and such a time. They call me up. I start doing this interview. Guy's got like a funny accent, but at any rate, we're carrying on, and he's asking me questions about the media and how the media affect people and growing up and so on. And I'm answering all of these questions based on my experience with growing up in the Midwest in the United States. And I'm assuming certain things about my audience here in Michigan. And finally, the host of this show says, Dr. Schultz, do you know where New Zealand is? And I said, yes, I assume it's about 30 miles away down the road here. He said, Dr. Schultz, have you ever heard of the country of New Zealand? Oh boy. I was doing a whole interview with listeners in the country of New Zealand, and I was answering all the questions as if I was talking to people in the United States. It was a disaster, really a disaster. Oh, I felt like such a moron. And he asked me, Dr. Schultz, on the program, have I ever heard of New Zealand? A few weeks later, I'm at church here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and one of the members of the church comes up to me and he says, Quinn, that's me, he says, Quinn, we heard you on the radio in New Zealand. I said, I've never been to New Zealand. And then I thought about it. I said, oh, yeah, I did an interview on the phone. He said, well, we thought you were in New Zealand. We were driving around New Zealand listening. He said that program was something like Good Morning New Zealand, broadcast across the whole country, the most popular morning show. I made a fool of myself on Radio New Zealand or whatever it's called. I just couldn't believe it. The mistakes that we make day in and day out. We have to have a sense of humor. It's a goofy process, isn't it, communication? Third, let me encourage you to befriend positive people. One of the things that helps us give up too much control over communication is to be around people who accept us as we are, who love us, who will laugh together, a good sense of humor about our mistakes together. Easygoing people, funny people, understanding people, encouraging people. Have such friends. Get together with them. Practice your communication. Tell some stories. Make some mistakes. And know that you'll be loved anyway through it. So, again, this has been my look at some of the aspects of Chapter 4 in my book, Communicating with Grace and Virtue. I hope you found this helpful. I'm Quentin Schultz, and I create these videos. I have a website you can go to and visit, www.quentinschultz.com. You can see it right there on the screen. You can contact me through that website if you'd like. My goal is to help you communicate better and have some fun along the way. I hope this has been helpful. So thanks for watching this, and to you I'll say shalom, which means peace. Peace to you.